This song is dedicated to all heroes and patriots who fall. This song called Innocent Blood, as I would say. In a revolution, some people are weak, while others are strong. Listen to my song.
Listen to my song. Listen to my song.
The weak turn to counter revolution, subversion and destabilization.
Listen to my song. Listen to my song.
Is the strong ones to stand firm and make things right?
True.
Show to the weak why we must unite. The weak, them, they don't know who they fighting for. Moving aimlessly in a senseless war. Murdering their people, innocent along the way. But we are go with them. So listen when I say, in this year time, oh no, I say they preaching war. They really kill them for. But are them tourists and no rain. But are them tourists and no rain. Singing but are them tourists and no rain. But are them tourists and no rain. In a revolution, some people are right, while others are wrong. Listen to my song. The wrong always feel that they have it right, that they are correct, so they want to fight. Is the right ones to lead and show them the way? They get more confused each and every day. Then opportunism and reaction to show these are brothers their dirty works to do. Turn them into robots, puppets on a string. They kill their own sisters and they don't care a thing. to Alistair. Tell me where they do that for. Alistair blood was innocent blood. Rupert Bishop, he was innocent too. I said innocent blood spilling Angola. Innocent blood spilling Jamaica. Innocent blood spilling Havana. Innocent blood spilling Grenada. Innocent blood in Guatemala. Innocent blood in Nicaragua. Innocent blood in El Salvador. Innocent blood spilling Vietnam.
Diddly bum 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 diddy bum bum stop the tribal war. Diddly bum 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 diddy bum bum stop the tribal war. I see the wall is car. The poor people was going in a car. They take out them gun and they open fire. I see the murder on the land. I see the say a murder on the land. The black people you should never fight. But sometimes you know you got to keep in your right. I say to go there with your tribal war. Yeah, go there with your tribal war. They should keep on shooting everybody down. You keep on shooting everybody down. Until you say you wouldn't see the rising sun. Until you say you wouldn't see the rising sun.
Armstrong blood was innocent blood. Stanislaus blood was innocent blood. Walter Rodney blood was innocent blood. Steve Biko blood was innocent blood. Romero blood was innocent blood. Lalcy blood was innocent blood. Courtney blood was innocent blood. Ivan Chas blood was innocent blood.
I said to love your little brother like you love your little sister. Love your little brother like you love your little sister. I said to leave love in everyone. I said to leave love in everyone. Say everyone got to deal with love. Say everyone got to deal with love. The people in a Grenada, I feel alright. The people in a Grenada are not going for us to fight. I say we got to get it right. Until you say we got to get it right. Say I just at the control tower. Say I.
What's up, everyone? So, tonight I'm not going to be trolling people who are stupid enough to think that Juche is something that is applicable to the United States or Britain or any other Western country in the year of Gonzalo 2023, because you can only do that for so long before it gets boring. Like, these people are absolutely fucking insane. The Korean Friendship Association is actually preparing to do a response to my, I believe they called it scurrilous and criminal attack on the Korean Revolution. So I look forward to reacting to that and laughing and having a good time with you all. But the song that I just played, it was titled Innocent Blood, a bit of revolutionary reggae for your evening. And the Innocent Blood, I mean, they referred to Walter Rodney and U.S. terror bombings in Cuba, the Boer onslaught that was going on in Angola at the time, the murder of revolutionary priest Oscar Romero, and all sorts of other atrocities that the United States government and its cronies engaged in through, like Maurice Bishop, who we're going to talk about later. He was basically the figurehead, the leader of the Grenadian Revo, as they called it. They didn't call it a revolution, they called it a revel, because this is the Caribbean, and Caribbean people abbreviate everything. But I digress. So what they're referring to is the Queen's Park bombing of June 19th, 1980. The Grenadian Revolution took place on March 13th, 1979. So on Thursday, June 19th, 1980, in the middle of the afternoon, there was a rally in Queen's Park Stadium. And it was a tribute to a couple of labor and emancipation leaders, Butler and Strachan. So somebody put a bomb under the podium. Seated on the raised platform were Prime Minister Maurice Bishop, Deputy Prime Minister Bernard Cord, Minister of Labor, Works and Communications Selwyn Strahan, Minister of Agriculture Unison Whiteman, Minister of Education George Louison, Minister of Health and Housing Norris Bain, Commander of the People's Revolutionary Army Hudson Austin, more on him and Mr. Cord later, Governor General Sir Paul Scoon. Yes, you had a Marxist revolution that kept the British Governor General, the figurehead of the Queen herself, in power. But more on that later. The Cuban ambassador Julian Rizzo and foreign guests. So they were basically trying to take out the entire leadership of the New Jewel movement. You want to find out what the hell the New Jewel movement is later. And everybody else and start shit. Thousands of people were at this rally, which was to pay tribute to Tubal Araya Butler and Alistair Strachan. Butler was a strong union leader from Grenada who led the labor movement in Trinidad. Strachan was an activist, NJM youth activist, murdered in 1977 by the Mongoose Gang, who was a set of former Prime Minister Gary's thugs. So, bit of backstory. Grenada got its independence, I believe, in the early 70s. But it had literally just become independent from the British, because independence from the British is the most common national holiday across the world. So Eric Gairy was the first prime minister of independent Grenada, and this guy was fucking nuts. They literally overthrew him when he was out of the country, but he had this gang of basically a mafia, a state mafia of people whose job it was to go around and beat the fuck out of people that dissented and oppose this shitty regime. We're going to find out more about the conditions that Eric Gairy left the country in before he was overthrown. But he was also unique because he believed in Obia, which is basically African diasporic traditional religion. In the United States, we call such practices hoodoo or voodoo. In Haiti, they call it vodun. In other countries, depending on what language they speak, they call it obia or santeria or candomblé. There's dozens of African-derived spiritual practices across the Americas because Africans lived and still live in every country in the Americas. So he was an obia man. That's what they called him, the obia man. And he also believed in UFOs. So wacky dude. And he was overthrown by the New Jewel movement. So two schoolgirls, Loris Humphrey, 13 years old, and Bernadette Bailey, 15 years old, died instantly. A third woman, Laureen Charles, 23 years old, died later. So that's what he was singing about. Bernadette, Loris, and Laureen. Those were the three murders that were committed by this mad bomber. Approximately 100 people were severely injured and many more were hospitalized. This brutal attack to kill the leaders of the Grenada Revolution, organized by the U.S.'s Central Intelligence Agency, was one of many such attempts. Some perceived that this was the moment at which the revolution became more serious. Of course, being a Marxist, I know that revolution is always serious, and you should too. So what was the New Jewel movement? The New Jewel movement, it's an acronym. So the New Jewel movement for power to the people and for achieving real independence for Grenada, Carriacou, and the Grenadines. So why did this movement exist? I mean, anywhere that people are exploited and oppressed, there's going to be a movement for liberation because nobody wants to be exploited and oppressed. So what was going on in Grenada? The people are being cheated and have been cheated for too long, cheated by both parties for over 20 years. Nobody is asking what the people want. We suffer low wages and higher cost of living while the politicians get richer, live in bigger houses, and drive around in even bigger cars. Sound familiar? The government has done nothing to help the people build decent houses. Most people still have to walk miles to get water to drink after 22 years of politicians. So this was released in 1973. If we fall sick, we catch hell to get quick and cheap medical treatment. Half of us can't find steady work. This place is getting from bad to worse every day, except for the politicians. Just look at how they dress and how they move around. The police are being used in politics these days. Sound familiar? Florida. And people are getting more and more blows from them. Government workers who don't toe the Gairy line are getting fired left and right. Even the magistrates better look out. The government has no idea how to improve agriculture, how to set up industries, how to improve housing, health, education, and general well-being of the people. They have no ideas for helping the people. All they know is how to take the people's money for themselves while the people scrape and scrunt for a living. Sound familiar? We believe that the main concern of us all is to prevent the daily rise in prices of all our food and clothes and other essentials. It is unbelievable, but that the price you can get for a pound of cocoa isn't enough to buy a half pound of fish. And two, develop a concrete program for raising the standard of housing, living, education, health, food, and recreation for all the people. The present situation that we face is that we are forced to live in jammed up, run down, unpainted houses without toilet or bath, without running water, very poor roads, overcrowded schools where our children can't get a decent education, and without any proper bus service. There is almost no ambulance service. Again, this is the year 1973 in case of illness. We cannot afford the cost of food to feed our children properly, and this makes it easier for them to catch all kinds of illnesses. There are very few places near home for recreation. All we have is the rum shop, aka the bar, to drown our troubles. It is almost impossible to buy clothes or shoes these days. The prices are ridiculous. 20 years of the GMP and GULP have made us believe that there is no way out of this blasted mess. But there is, and the time is now to do something about it. What we want to do in this manifesto is to give a rough idea of a way out. We can start by looking at some of the ways in which we can set about to wipe out poverty in Grenada. So they're basically declaring their intent. Their intent is not to set up a fucking utopia. It is to deal with these conditions that people live in. This is the third world, okay? Like the hood in the United States would make Grenada would make the hood in the United States look like fucking Beverly Hills or Sutton Place. Okay, like this is a horrible fucking standard of living. You've got a Obia man, a UFO believing crook who has nothing better to do than run the Mongoose gang and steal people's money. And you have a few 100,000 people, maybe less, because Grenada is a pretty small island. You have your people living in fucking misery. So what does the NJM want to do? Like, how are they going to fix this? Because, like, the thing with, like, Western leftists is that they write manifestos, long manifestos like this. Grenadian Alex Jones with CIA backing. Exactly. So, like, what was their plan to fix this? They've demonstrated in this long thing that I read, but I'm not going to bore y'all with it. It's a lot of economic facts and figures. I'm going to link it in my YouTube description if you want to read it. But so they've explained and demonstrated that they know what the fuck they're talking about because they've done what Maoists call social investigation and class analysis. And they say very few people in Grenada today need any more convincing that the island is in a total absolute mess. To all of us, the most fundamental, urgent, and crucial question is the taking of political power by the organized people so as to clear up this mess and set the island back on course. And then they propose a national congress of the people to work out the best strategy for taking power. To create the new life for the new man in society, it is necessary that we reject the current economic and political system which we live under. More than this, we need to construct an entirely new system of values where the lust for money, power, and individual selfish gain are no longer the motivating factors. The creation of this new man demands a transformation of the minds and hearts of each and every one of us. In the new society, our people will be encouraged to give full expression to their sporting, artistic, and dramatic expression. So this is basically a proposal for a sort of semi-cultural revolution. Like, it's not just about economics, but they're trying to create what Shea would call the socialist new man and woman. It's not just about economics. That's where a lot of people fuck up because they think that, oh, all we have to do is fix whatever, fix the economic system, and we're all good. Like, no. What you're going to have is you're going to have fascism. You're going to have fascism, except it's going to be state-owned fascism now. The state owns everything, but you've still got racism. You still got police brutality, except it's the people's stick. It's the people's police now. I guess me saying this is why I'm every anarchist's favorite tanky. I don't know. But, so the new society must not speak only of democracy, but must practice it in all its aspects. We must stress the polity of self-reliance and self-sufficiency, undertaken cooperatively, and reject the easy approaches offered by aid and foreign assistance. So already, he's talking about, like, we're not just going to be a puppet of the Soviet Union. We're actually going to work towards our own independence. Of course, Grenada being a very small island, you can only do so much. Like, is it going to be loaded with heavy industries, able to produce everything that it needs? Absolutely not. You're still going to have to trade with the so-called socialist bloc, which we Maoists believe was a revisionist bloc, but I digress. I've kind of moved away from just like tarring everything as revisionist because, like, let's be real, like Marxist, Leninist, Maoists, as we understand, Maoism has never really taken over and administered a country. The best that Maoists have administered is small base areas, not entire countries. So I've kind of slacked up on that because, like, it's important to realize that when you liberate yourself for the first time, you are going to have to do some things that dogmatism and strict adherence to theory may not want you to do. But it's like, it's an option. Do you want your people to starve, or do you want to be theoretically pure? And why the Juche stands are pissed at me? Well, the Juche stands are pissed at everything. But again, like, if you believe in Juche in the year 2023, you are delusional. So I don't particularly care what delusional people think. I just find them funny. In the new society, all of our people will be encouraged to find answers to the questions. Who are we? What is the nature of our condition? Why are we in that condition? What can we do to change that condition? What can we change it to? We will together search to find answers to the questions. What do we want? Why do we want that? How can we get what we want? What must we do to make sure we keep what we achieve? We will develop attitudes which will always encourage us to ask questions and move us to find meaningful and lasting solutions. Our real enemies will always be exposed, while we will always strive to work closely with our brothers and sisters in the third world. The aim will be to encourage our people always to demonstrate true solidarity with our brothers, always strive to find our real identity, always to work harder and harder at developing a true national consciousness and a real and meaningful integration of the entire Caribbean area. Our Grenadian brothers and sisters overseas in particular will be encouraged to join hands with us here to build a better land for our children and our children's children. We know that none of this is possible under the present setup. Our first task, therefore, is the destruction of Gairyism and the system it represents. To this end, we of the New Jewel movement dedicate ourselves. Onward to victory. Onward to the new society. People of Grenada, you have nothing to lose but your continued exploitation. You have your destiny to fulfill. Ever onward to victory. So that's pretty dope. That's pretty dope. Like, if I was in Grenada in the early 70s, I definitely would have joined the NJM. International affairs. We stand firmly committed to a nationalist, anti-imperialist, anti-colonialist position. We fully support the Organization of Non-Aligned Nations. That was a group that Tito helped set up, in their courageous attempts to prevent big power domination of their economies and internal politics, and propose to join that organization at the earliest opportunity. For as long as the present composition of the OAS, the Organization of American States, basically a fucking conglomeration of American puppet states, for as long as the present composition of the OAS is maintained, we will not apply for admission to that body. We condemn in the strongest possible terms the intervention of the USA in the internal affairs of the Southeast Asian countries and the genocidal practices being committed on their peoples. We support in particular the heroic struggle of the people of Vietnam and Cambodia. We reject the right of the USA or any other big power to control the economies and lives of people anywhere. We support fully the liberation struggles being waged by our African brothers in South Africa, Southwest Africa, aka Namibia, Mozambique, Rhodesia, Angola, and Guinea-Bissau for self-determination. So this is a Pan-African revolutionary movement. As a priority, we would ban all imports from South Africa, Namibia, and Portugal or its colonies, and would cut off all trading and ties with these countries. None of these nationals of these countries will be allowed access or entry to our island. So it's not just we're not trading with you. It's not just we're putting sanctions on you. It's like, if you are South African, if you are from Namibia or Portugal or any other colony, we will ban you. Like, you will not be allowed to enter our country. That is dope. We will not allow the nationals of countries with racist laws designed to keep out black people, such as the United Kingdom or the USA, to have free, open, and unrestricted entry into our island. We deplore the rampant racism that our fellow West Indians and our other black brothers suffer in America, Britain, and Canada, and will give them whatever concrete support that we can. We salute the just and heroic struggle being waged on Caribbean soil by progressive forces here. We are confident of our eventual victory. So, very, very advanced line on international affairs. Far more advanced than half of these fucking brownie-ass groups in the United States. So, this is a about hour-long documentary. It's called The Future Coming Towards Us. And this was released in 1983. a few months before the New Jewel movement basically destroyed itself through infighting. So what happened was the guy that you're going to see speaking early on is Maurice Bishop. Okay, he was like the face of the revolution. So he was a very, very good speaker. But there was a sort of notion in the party that he had neglected party affairs. Okay, the party, especially those two guys that we met earlier, Hudson Austin, who was head of the military, and the Deputy Prime Minister Bernard Cord, did not like Bishop very much. I mean, it was, I guess you could call those two, Austin and Cord, tankies, but like they wanted a more traditional Marxist-Leninist style for the party. And they resented Bishop because he was personally popular with the people. It's not great man theory, but like the people loved this dude. He was the guy that they identified with the New Jewel movement. He was the guy that they identified with the Revel. So what these two guys and their clique did was they arrested Bishop, put him under house arrest, and the people freed him from house arrest. So they arrested him again, and he ended up being executed, along with several members of the government, and his partner and other members of his family. The island ended up under a military dictatorship for a few days until Reagan was like, you know what, this is a perfect opportunity for us to get rid of these commies that are in Grenada. So that's what happens when you infight, but more on that later. Let's watch a little bit of this.
On June 5, 1983, Grenada's Prime Minister, Maurice Bishop, addressed an audience of some 3,000 people at Hunter College in New York City. Bishop was in the United States as part of his government's long-standing policy to normalize relations with the United States. But the Reagan administration, rather than consenting to meet with the Prime Minister, stepped up its attacks against Grenada, accusing the Bishop government of being a Soviet-Cuban pawn and a threat to democracy in the region.
The real reason for all of this hostility is because some perceive that what is happening in Grenada can lay the basis for a new socio-economic and political path of development. They give all kinds of reasons and excuses, some of them credible, some utter rubbish. There's an interesting one that we saw very recently in a secret report of the State Department. I want to tell you about that one, so you can reflect on that one. That secret report made this point, that Grenada is different to Cuba and Nicaragua, and the Grenada Revolution is in one sense...
Also, fun fact, that the Mongoose gang that you're going to keep hearing about, they were actually trained by Cuban secret police. Yeah, they were trained by Pinochet's boys. One thing leads to another. Everybody's connected. Everybody knows each other.
Even
one big happy family of fascist repression.
Worse, I'm using their language, than the Cuban and Nicaraguan revolutions, because the people of Grenada and the leadership of Grenada speaks English and therefore can communicate directly to the people of the United States. But I want to tell you what that same report also said, and said that also made us very dangerous. And that is that the people of Grenada and the leadership of Grenada are predominantly black. They said that 95% of our population is black, and they had a correct statistic. And if we have 95% of predominantly African origin in our country, then we can have a dangerous appeal to 30 million black people in the United States.
This is something that the United States government has. This is something that the United States government has always been afraid of. Like going all the way back to when they first brought us over here. They were afraid of being outnumbered by us. And what Bishop said was 100% true. Like, you have this island of 95% African extraction, right? You have this man that's speaking in New York City at Hunter College to an audience of black people, literally saying that we made our revolution. What are you all waiting for? There's 30 million involved. There's only a few 100,000 of us. So that is extremely dangerous. Like, anybody familiar with the basics of what COINTELPRO did and what COINTELPRO was afraid of knows that J. Edgar Hoover and his predecessors wanted to prevent the rise of a so-called black messiah. That is why when any black leaders started to get credence or clout, if you will, among the masses of our people, they took him out, they murdered him, drove him into exile like they did Kwame Ture, or they discredited him. For example, they tried to make it like Martin Luther King was a habitual womanizer, that he frequented white prostitutes and bullshit like that. They wanted to slander these people in the eyes of our masses so that the ideologies and ideas and actions and practices that they were putting down would be discredited in the eyes of our people. They portrayed the Black Panther Party as a bunch of drug addicts and sex-crazed maniacs, and they were really, really pissed because Malcolm X was basically like a saint. He was a monk. Like, he had no real personal vices whatsoever. He didn't go to prostitutes. He didn't take drugs. He didn't drink alcohol. Like, this man was strictly about his work. That's what pissed the FBI off, because what the FBI does is they try to find like little shit. Either it's in your past or you're doing it now. That's why a lot of revolutionary organizations don't allow drug addicts and they don't allow habitual drunkards in, because the police and the FBI and all of these other agencies will literally pick up on that shit and use it against you and try to turn you into an informant or use it to discredit your organization. So, speaking of Grenada and Malcolm X, there's actually a connection between the two of them. Malcolm X's mother, Louise Norton, was actually born on a little island in Grenada called La Digue. And Maurice Bishop actually talks about it in one of his speeches. But that's why I laugh at like those foundational black assholes, or the what's that other one? The people that basically dump on black immigrants from other countries, because like all of our theoreticians, all of our revolutionary leadership has roots in one place: American descendants of slaves. Thank you, Gaius Julius Tiberius. Gaius Julius Tiberius. Well, we know where your family's from. Anyways, so yeah, American descendants of slaves. Like, you have Malcolm X, whose mom came from Grenada. You have Marcus Garvey. Like, all of us came from somewhere else. None of us, indigenous blood notwithstanding, all of us who are predominantly African originate in the continent of Africa. Like, none of us are really indigenous to this continent. So I just find that shit funny. But I digress. Let's go back to listen to Maurice.
Less than 5 months after his appearance at Hunter College, Maurice Bishop, a number of leading members of the New Jewel movement, and many Grenadan citizens were killed. 6 days later, following the executions and killings, 6,000 U.S. troops, supported by helicopter gunships, fighter aircraft, and
you gotta have 6,000 troops to invade a little bitty island.
A large naval task force.
And they were really shook because Cuba was actually helping Grenada build an airport. And they thought that, oh no. Reagan was like, oh no, they're going to put Ruski missiles there. We can't let that happen, can we, George? No, we can't. So, 6,000 troops to fight an under-equipped military on a little bitty island. Call that overkill, and they call the Russians the bears.
From the world's most powerful nation invaded Grenada. the smallest sovereign nation in the Western Hemisphere.
When we explain the gains of the revolution, to take them out of this old style, where they just come from their field, and from the field to their bed, after a while, people begin to understand that all lives don't have to be so hard. Things can change, you know.
Gone are the days when our mothers and sisters were sex-exploited for jobs.
Today, the people are enjoying many more democratic rights and freedoms and are much more involved and participating in the building of our revolutionary process.
All country are different things we want to form. Normalize the people, teach, learn for myself, the youth, the old, the young, in education, all such of things that will be help to build the revolution.
The Caribbean is a region of many cultures and peoples who share a common history. Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique make up a small country in the Caribbean Sea. The country's 110,000 people are mostly of African descent. They took control of their lives and their future through a revolution on March 13, 1979, the first revolution in the English-speaking Caribbean.
If we are going to talk about the revolution in Grenada, first of all, there was no...
She said the first revolution in the English-speaking Caribbean. This wasn't just the first English-speaking Caribbean revolution. This was the first successful Marxist revolution, Marxist-influenced revolution, because I'm really iffy on just characterizing black people under categories and black processes under categories that white people developed. So the first Marxist-influenced revolution anywhere in the English-speaking world. This was a world historic thing.
freedom.
And when I said Marxist influence, I'm not saying I am not like putting it into any box. Okay, like I'm saying that the New Jewel movement was heavily influenced by the work of Marx, Engels, and Lenin, and it was heavily influenced by the process that was initiated by the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917 and the subsequent socialist construction process. So people are always trying to lump us into various tendencies and categories. It's a very opportunistic and horrible thing to do. So I used to do that, but I don't anymore.
There was definitely a government that was in power to keep down each and every person in this island that had the ability or the ambition to go forward, lift the head above the water. We know that for a fact.
We're in a different era now, all that man. Grenada, a big evolution. In a little country. In a little country. Yes. When they see what Grenada doing, and see progress is making.
We know the future, we could see the future coming towards us, right?
This vibration, you don't get it.
March 13th, 1979, comrades, was a bright new dawn for the people of Grenada and the working people of the Caribbean. That dawn marked the end of the long, dark night of terror and the beginning of a new day for our people.
As Prime Minister Maurice Bishop said, this revolution is creating a new democracy. It has opened up great opportunities for the people to participate in making the decisions which affect their everyday lives and the future of their country.
Oh, Grenada! Oh, Grenada! Oh, Kaiku, Kitimatic, feeling it too. Oh, Grenada! Oh, Grenada! Oh, Kaiku, Kitimatic, feeling it too. Whenever you are in action, we'll start it down. To bring about a revolution. For your money in retreat, and the people no longer hungry, and we're building a new society. Free Grenada, free Grenada, free Kaiku, free democratic rejoice.
It has brought them hope. It has brought them joy.
Free Grenada, free Kaiku, free democratic rejoicing too.
I once thought that a man has a right to love, maybe a woman or something of the sort. But I later learned that a man has a right to love his country first. We slave for a colonial system, a capitalistic, an imperialistic system. But now we're slaving for ourselves. If you call it slavery, we're slaving for ourselves. It didn't come by an accident. It came through the struggling people of this country with their will to free themselves.
First, the Arawaks inhabited the island, and then the Caribs, from whom the region gets its name. When the Europeans came to the region, many Caribs resisted and were killed. Some leaped to death in the sea rather than submit to domination. From the time Europeans first came to this region, they fought one another for control of the area's land, wealth, and sea lanes. Some of the territories fell under British control, others under Spanish, French, or Dutch, but all suffer from the effects of 400 years of exploitation. The British eventually gained control of Grenada and incorporated the island into their colonial system of triangular trade. This system took raw materials and luxury items to Europe and brought finished manufactured goods from Europe to the colonies.
I want to hear the drum.
Africans were captured and brought to the colonies to provide the needed labor.
When them colonial powers came here, they raped us, they beat us, they accuse us, and they refuse us.
Following the abolition of slavery in 1833, the former slaves were free to work as wage earners on the large estates owned by a local elite. But the triangular trading pattern still continues.
Anything of ours that had any value, had any worth, anything that we are able to produce that can get some money for, have been shipped away. In a way, it seems as if our whole life, or people, or culture, or being have been...
I'm back. I know it's rude. I hate people that just like. Well, I don't hate anybody because I try not to judge other people unless you follow Juche. But like, it's just rude to me. Like, I was raised with some semblance of home training and manners, but like, it's just rude to just get up and walk away and leave. Like, teachers used to do that in school. Like, I try to engage with the people that take time out to listen to me ramble about revolutionary politics. So I'm not in the habit of just getting up, wandering away, or doing other things. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I will eventually get into that habit, but for now, that's just rude. But I'm back.
Made to be shipped away to the metropolitan countries. In that whole process of shipping ourselves away, we have been underdeveloped. We have been consciously underdeveloped, if you can call it that way.
Among agricultural workers, you know, they have to get up early in the morning, go to work, come back, hurry home in the afternoon.
And these were the exact types of conditions that my grandmother, like my grandma literally had to leave. I believe she dropped out of high school, but anyway, she did not finish her education because she grew up on a cotton plantation in Mississippi. And she had to leave school to go help with the fucking harvest. She had to go help produce this white man's crop so he could sell it and then cheat his workers, who he basically treated as peons, out of the just produce of their labor. Sharecropping is basically, okay, you grow the cotton and we split it, or I take out whatever I furnished you. Okay, but they took advantage of the fact that a lot of black people in the South in the 40s and 50s did not have a command of basic arithmetic because they were forced to drop out of school to help with the harvest. So when the boss man, the guy who owned the plantation, came time to do the books, he'd just be like, he'd literally just add shit that he had never furnished these people. Like, it was basically new slavery, and be like, oh, you owe me $500. You gotta stay here for another year. Sorry. Like, that is exactly what happened. Like, that has been the case throughout anywhere that a plantation type or sharecropping type economy has taken place. Very backwards, neo-feudal system.
And this thing had to go on every day. They lived in houses that were falling down. They couldn't buy adequate food at the end of the week because they were only working from $12 and $15.
Another thing, like malnutrition. Like, if you look at health studies from the South in the 30s and 40s and 50s, like, you had people that were suffering from ringworm, hookworm, all sorts of shit, pellagra, scurvy, diabetes. Like, diabetes is still a major killer of black and working class poor white people in the South because you can't get food. All you've got are fucking starch, potatoes, cornbread, beans, stuff like that. That shit's not healthy. The only meat you got is what you killed yourself, or it's shitty, salted, preserved, canned, or tinned meat. Yeah. So wherever you find this type of exploitative, backwards-ass system, you'll find people that have their life expectancy of maybe 55, 60 years old. Okay, like today you think somebody's old when they're 85, 90 years old. In places like Grenada before the revolution, or in Mississippi, Alabama, Nicaragua, where you have peon feudal agriculture, like you've got people either starving to death, you've got high rates of child mortality, or you've got people that drop dead at the age of 60 from a heart attack or from diabetes. They go blind, amputees, stuff like that. My great grandmother was an amputee. She had diabetes real fucking bad growing up in the South in the early 1900s, and yeah, it fucked her up. Capitalism kills. Literally. Like, that's not just a metaphor.
At the end of the week. And what did they get for it?
When the industrialized countries suffered under the Great Depression of the 1930s, Many Grenadians were forced to go to other islands seeking work. There they soon became involved in the trade union and anti-colonial movements which had sprung up throughout the region. In the early 1950s, one Eric Matthew Gairy returned to Grenada and organized a union for agricultural workers. He used this position to gain political power, and when Grenada became independent in 1974, Gairy became its first prime minister.
So, former trade unionist that ends up becoming a basic fascist. There's an Italian dude that had that backstory. I don't think Gairy ever called himself a socialist, but like, there's an Italian dude, El Duce, Mussolini, had a so-called socialist background and ended up becoming a horrible fascist. History repeats itself, first as horrible tragedy, and then secondly as UFO believing, Obeah practicing farce. No offense if anybody practices African traditional religions. I'm quite interested in those myself.
Eric Gairy permitted the economy of his country to continue to serve foreign interests, and he aligned Grenada with other repressive regimes. At the height of Gairy's repression, he sent members of his security force to Augusto Pinochet's Chile for training in torture techniques.
Oh, what's that? Nice to see you. Nice to see you. Who's your friend?
I swear to God, like, anywhere there's some fuck shit, this motherfucker shows up. Anywhere some fuck shit happened between the early 60s and today, Kissinger has either opined on it or he's played a direct role in it. Just objective evil. Like, there is no vindicating factor about this. I'm of the strong opinion that he's been allowed to live to be 100 years old just so that he could just sit and be trapped in this decaying, putrefying body as the world moves on around him. Like, this man is being punished.
Right Honorable Sir Eric Gairy.
By now, the United States was the dominant force in the region, and it projected Gairy as a respectable Caribbean leader. But he led his people to believe that the key to his success and power came from God.
So Eric Gairy projects himself as the only person that stands between God and Grenadians. He said several times that he was only answerable to God.
He made the statement himself. And
also, if you have somebody that's wearing sunglasses indoors, that motherfucker is evil. Anytime. Bono, Papa Doc, this motherfucker. Sunglasses indoors, unless you're blind. I'm not being ableist, but if you have perfectly good vision and you're wearing fucking shades indoors, there's something wrong with you. You're an evil person. You're not a nice person. You should not be in leadership of any country.
And so people did not find it very easy to challenge the leader, since the leader was God's representative on earth. He was ruling by divine right.
ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
And therefore all questions relating to his tenure of office, relating to his abuses and so forth, should not be directed to him, but indeed should be directed to God.
In the midst of Gairy's tyranny.
That's a nice little loophole. Don't get mad at me because the Mongoose Gang beat you up. Get mad at God.
He was knighted by the Queen of England.
We did not have to read.
He actually deserved to be a knight. Like, if you look at the history of knights and what knights did, like, these were very, very brutal, evil people. Like, anytime you just surround a fucking castle and just starve women and children to death, like, these are not nice people. Granted, cavalry didn't really, like, just sit outside. These were your shock troops, the ones that rode out and mowed everybody down. But you had to be, like, a knight is basically a glorified killer. And that's exactly what Gairy was. So he deserved to be a knight. He earned his knighthood from the Queen of the most evil country in human existence. Well, the second most evil country in human existence. It's kind of a tie. maybe the third behind France. It varies from day to day.
Karl Marx to understand what in fact was before our eyes for all our lives.
Gairy's personal corruption led the country into economic decline. Agricultural production dropped 25%. Unemployment rose to 47%. Food prices rose 200%. Clothing 164%. Housing 135%. Moreover,
that makes the inflation in the United States look like rookie numbers. 133% inflation, 105% inflation. Like, Jesus fucking Christ.
Sexually exploited women who sought work in the public sector. Gairy built no new roads, no new schools, no new infrastructure.
Under Gairy, there were roads in the hole rather than holes in the road. So bad was the situation. You know, to take a bus from Grenville to St. George's used to cost a laborer what that laborer would make in a day. Remember people coming down the road, either cursing or crying or, you know, in dismay from the kinds of lack of social services that there were in the country. People were taking out their teeth instead of having it repaired because to fill a tooth was so expensive. I remember the...
imagine, okay, you got this dude. He's a religious nut. He's also a knight. And your living conditions are so bad, so abominable, that you have to have all of your teeth pulled out of your fucking head. Like, you cannot even afford to get basic dental treatment. That is like, bruh. Like, it just belies words. I'm rarely at a loss for words, but just imagine, like, oh, I'm just going to let all my teeth fall out, or I'm going to go to this fucking root doctor and let him take a pair of hot pliers and just pull all the teeth out of my head. That's fucking crazy.
The situation facing people for medical care, where people would go and sit for hours and hours and hours.
These conditions led to widespread anger and dissatisfaction among Grenadians. The New Jewel movement became the leading opposition party, presenting the people with a platform which clearly outlined a new social and economic system. This approach allowed the people to organize their anger against the Gairy regime and his secret police force, the Mongoose Gang.
You look at the Mongoose Gang, and their job, as given by Gairy, was to harass, intimidate, beat up, and murder anybody who was opposed to Eric Gairy.
They even assassinated Rupert Bishop, the father of the present Prime Minister.
Gairy moved in with more and more army forces, and then the guns started firing. I was backed by 4 gunmen. But I passed through because I can't walk faster than a gunshot. There's no use of running.
The unrest continued to mount in the country. In 1979, Gairy planned to have the entire NJM leadership killed while he was on a trip to the United States.
The plan was that Gairy was going to leave the country on Monday midday, and the instructions that were being left behind was that we should be liquidated. That left us in a position where we had to choose whether to sit and wait for liquidation or whether we should move on the offensive. What we did was that from our positions in hiding, the decision was taken that the next morning we should, at this point in the name of the people, move to seize power from the...
So yeah, it was basically like kill or be killed. And like people are like, oh, this shows that, like, no, it doesn't really show. It shows that the NJM was in touch with the concrete conditions. They knew that they probably had informers within Gairy's government. They knew that they were about to be fucking massacred. So they're like, you know what? Small Island, cops and army are disorganized. We're organized. This is a testament, if anything, to the superiority of Marxist-Leninist style of organization. You have to have an iron discipline. Otherwise, you won't be able to do stuff like this. If they had not been disciplined, they would have been massacred. Like the Mongoose gang and the cops and the army would have just came and slaughtered them all, and there would have been no New Jewel movement. And Eric Gairy would have been in power for God knows how long.
Of dictatorship.
It took approximately 24 hours for the revolutionary forces, people who responded to the call of the revolution, to, in fact, seize political power in our country.
The government of the criminal dictator, Eric M. Gairy, has been overthrown.
Only 2 people were killed during the revolt. The Mongoose gang was detained in prison. None were executed.
Bad move. You should have shot them all.
Not even the men who killed Rupert Bishop were harmed.
All religious rights and freedom are now restored.
That's the thing. Like, that's universal. Like, when you make a revolution, you do not allow members of the former government's secret police. I don't care how much of an affinity you have for them as fellow black people. Like, you cannot allow people like that to remain, because these used to be very, very powerful men. They were used to being able to do whatever the fuck they want. And now you have a revolutionary government and you're just going to throw them in prison and maybe release them, hoping that, like, they're going to become valuable members of society. But it's like, no, they're going to continue. They're going to be talking to Gairy. They're going to be sneaking in and out of the country. Like, you cannot allow that to happen. You have to liquidate those people. They were planning to liquidate you. Now you're in power. Liquidate them. Get rid of them.
When describing the day of the revolution, a 72-year-old woman said, "When we hear news of the revolution, it was joy come out. I lifted above the sky."
Gairy is a wanted man.
Gairy now resides in Southern California. There's a bunch of reactionary former South Vietnamese officials and stuff that live in South. Like, that's basically like Southern California and the Washington, D.C. area in New York. Like, those are the 3 capitals of deposed dictators and their cronies.
New freedom also meant facing the reality of a country in complete economic disarray. Nearly half of the workforce was unemployed. There was only $24 left in the national treasury. The new government and the...
Did they say that there was only $24 left in the... I forgot Florida. $24? I got to hear that again. How much was left in the national treasury?
Facing the reality of a country in complete economic disarray. Nearly half of the workforce was unemployed. There was only $24 left in the national treasury.
How do you fuck up your country so bad that there's only $24? Bruh.
The new government and the people had to move swiftly to bring benefits to the people and at the same time institute a plan for long-term economic stability.
Well, the revolution means a lot to me. It means a lot because it helped me so much that I can't really, tell how great the things, it means a lot.
Everybody putting their hands and heart together. And I feel we're making a lot of progress because you're seeing the country go forward. You could see the action of the people with smiles and things.
3 years after the revolution, the World Bank reported a growth in Grenada's economy of 2%, at a time when most of the other countries of the world were in an economic decline. Despite the ongoing hardships, people can see that things are getting better. Over 12,000 people have benefited from the housing repair program. Low-income housing is available for the first time. Healthcare is recognized as a right for all people.
We've had an increase in the number of doctors that are working in the General Hospital, the subsidiary hospitals in Carriacou, Martinique. We have not only had an increase in quantity, but we've had an increase in quality. We've had assistance from a lot of the friendship groups, from a lot of countries, from organizations that comprise not only Grenadians, but other internationalists in solidarity with the revolution in Grenada.
It really interests me how revolutionary politics influences health and health medicine, and especially also how they are going to build up this sort of primary health care system here. That's what interested me most.
To maintain their power, the colonialists kept the people uneducated, thus preventing the development of the country. Now, for the first time in a century, a new public secondary school has been built. The National Women's Organization provides free school books and uniforms for the children of very low-income families. And sports, cultural, and recreational programs are provided after school for children 5 through 14.
I really like Pioneers, and I do a lot of skits and so. And in the Pioneers, we encourage all to be good at school, to learn the lessons and so. And later days to come, we could be the Prime Minister or the Minister or so.
From the southeast and central zone, we have Nico Church.
We want the kids in the United States of America to be free as we in Grenada, in revolutionary Grenada. We are the flowers of the revolution, the pioneers.
Look at it again. When we have free education, you don't have to pay for that. Sometimes ago, I know I had to pay $50 a term for my son to go to school and my daughter. But now here it is, free education.
Our people have made the revolution. The revolution is the people. And without educating and preparing them for the role that they have to play within the change that is taking.
So, like, Maoists would criticize something like this as being, oh, they didn't immediately declare cultural revolution. And yeah, I already criticized it because, like, they should have liquidated the fucking Mongoose gang. But, like, you have to consider, like, from where these people were coming. And it always kills me, like, when people talk about, oh, well, China was able to, okay, China is a huge country. It has a huge population. It has a wealth of natural resources. Grenada is a literal mountain, well, a collection of mountains rising up the sea. It only has 110,000 people. It has fish. It has spice. It's actually called the Nutmeg Isle, the Spice Isle. It grows stuff like that, okay? Very underdeveloped. You had Gairy, who helped to steal what the Brits didn't steal when they called themselves granting them independence. Like, this country was fucked. So I would never, ever begrudge a country, especially an African descendant country, an African or an African diasporic country, for taking measures and aligning itself with people like the Cubans who were willing to help it, like, arise out of the situation. You had people that literally had to have their teeth pulled with hot fucking pliers, okay? No schools. This fucker Gairy didn't build any roads. Fishing fleet probably fucked. Nothing, okay? God knows what the life expectancy was under Gairy. And the Brits were even worse. Like, the Brits would just show up and shoot you. So when we're talking about, we're analyzing prior revolutionary experiences, okay? You have to take into account the concrete conditions. You have to take into account, like, what these people were going through. So yeah, that's just my spiel. Because, like, I never really was a hyper dogmatic Maoist, and I still am a Maoist. Like, I don't know why people are saying that, oh, Chris, BRG is a social democrat. Like, no, the fuck I'm not. Okay? I am not a social democrat. I'm still a Maoist. But, like, I'm a Maoist that also studies history and knows how to use my fucking head. So, that's what revolution is about. Using your fucking head and serving the people.
Place now, we would not have a revolution.
Yeah. I am from Grenada, Carico, and Petit Martinique. You are from Martinique. He is from Aruba.
The Center for Popular Education immediately tackled the problem of adult illiteracy, lowering it to 5% in less than 3 years.
Are from the Caribbean.
Your trainer don't ask you at any point in time to Daddy assist me in show me how to do this song, that song.
That's what I'm talking about, really.
Right, and you get a problem because you haven't got the reading and writing skill to show them how to do.
And what hurt me heart is when you see they go to school and they come back and they have their homework to do and they're having some tough time. I don't have to tell them. I don't know what to tell them. Like, I'm really, really interested. They really feel me there, you know.
Right.
Because, I mean, who to tell them? It's we.
Right.
Yeah, the rest of the film, I'm going to link this as well. The rest of the film
Things for themselves.
basically goes on to talk about like the development of the country. And shortly after all this, you had the whole fuckery within the New Jewel movement, and then you had Reagan invading the island to save American medical students and stop the island from becoming a communist base. Yes, communism is bad. So there's an interview with Maurice Bishop shortly after he took office. We inherited a situation of absolutely no planning. It was anarchy. In the 1918 budget, there was $15 for an economist for the whole year. When we pressed in Parliament, we were told that there was a token provision in the event that they found an economist. There was no planning. Gairy believed that he was a mystic. He seemed to believe that he had a direct line to God, and that's how the problems of the country got solved. On relations with the U.S., we are obviously no threat to America, nor is Cuba for that matter. I think Washington fears that we could set an example for the rest of the region if our revolution succeeds. In the Caribbean region, you're talking about small countries with small populations and limited resources, countries that over the years have been classic examples of neo-capitalist dependencies. Now you have these new governments like Nicaragua, which actually liberated itself with the Sandinista movement in 1979. Of course, you had the country spend the entire 1980s at war, thanks again to President Reagan. And Grenada that are attempting a different experiment. They're no longer looking at development as how many hotels you have on the beach, but in terms of what benefits people get. How many people have jobs? How many are being fed, housed, and clothed? Like, if the United States wasn't so ideologically opposed to communism or socialism or anything that even looks remotely like it, like this is an example of a government that you should support. Like, this is a good government. The idea, the purpose of a government is to take care of the people. If you listen to American politicians, isn't it? Of course, as a Marxist, Leninist, Maoist, I know that the purpose of a government, of a state, is to represent and support the interests of the people who own that state, which is why it's important for us to have a state. Sorry, anarchists. But, yeah, like, if you listen to American politicians' bullshit, like, this is exactly what you should want. Like, how could you oppose this? You want to get people jobs. You want to feed, house, and clothe people. I mean, you should like this. They're trying to become independent so that you don't have to keep chucking foreign aid money at them. How many of the children receive education? We certainly believe in Grenada that the people of the English-speaking Caribbean want to see a socialist-type experiment like that succeed. They want to see what we are trying to build come about. America understands that, and obviously if we are able to succeed where previous governments following different models failed, that would be very, very subversive. This is also interesting. He talks about how we took power outside the ballot box and we are trying to build our revolution on the basis of a new form of democracy, grassroots and democratic, creating mechanisms and institutions which really have relevance to the people. If we succeed, it will bring into question this whole parliamentary approach to democracy, which we regard as having failed in the region. That sounds kind of like Maoism. And this is probably the most important part. Non-alignment for us is the right to build our own system and the right to have relations with all countries that we deem desirable, which essentially means all countries bar South Africa. So this is kind of like Ho Chi Minh. Like, Ho Chi Minh did not hate the United States. Like, he literally quoted the American Declaration of Independence in the address where he declared the independence of Vietnam. So most of these progressive leaders do not despise and want to destroy the United States. But the United States doesn't realize that, and it continues to support these tin-pot dictators, your Jims, your Garys, your Papa Docs, your Pinochets, your fucking Bolsonaros, like assholes like this who the people despise. That is why most of the world hates the United States. Most of the world actually digs our culture, and which is American culture is basically a conglomeration of all the nations that it's oppressed. But anyways, like most people in the world would probably say that the United States, at least culturally, is cool. That's why so many of them continue to want to come to live here. But like in terms of what this country has done, like the horrible bullshit that this country continues to support, like why the fuck would you support somebody like Eric Gairy? The people hate this man. He had to travel with a band of fucking goons in public, otherwise the people would beat him to death. Bishop, on the other hand, could walk around like he could go sit at the fucking rum shop and not have to worry about somebody fucking him over. It took his own party to fuck him over. So that's why people hate the fucking United States, because it goes in, it fucks up good shit like what was going on in Grenada. It destabilizes these places. It promotes conflict, or it takes advantage of conflict, and it sends Marines, 6,000 fucking troops, to basically impose the old system that people fought to get rid of. So, yeah, just more statistics. This is from Jacobin. At the time of the revolution, Grenada had an official unemployment rate of 20%. The People's Revolutionary Government would later argue that the real number was 49%, one of the lowest rates of gross domestic product per capita in the region, in widespread poverty. The island's economy remained almost entirely reliant on agricultural exports, first sugar, and then, as the 70s progressed, on cocoa, nutmeg, banana, and mace. Promised diversification had failed to materialize, with Grenada's small and ineffective airport. By 1979, it lacked even lights for nighttime landings, meaning that most tourists had to arrive via neighboring islands. After the revolution, in many ways, the political structure established by the People's Revolutionary Government was classically Marxist-Leninist. Although there was considerable participation in grassroots groups like the National Women's Organization, rival political parties were banned, the Constitution was suspended, rule was carried out by decree of the party's political bureau, and elections, contrary to repeated pledges, were never held. Despite this, Socialist Grenada's economic program differed substantially from that of the neighboring Cuba, its closest ally in the region. In his 1982 speech, Line of March, Bishop was clear that Grenada had rejected the model of state monopoly on ownership, pursuing instead a mixed economy with the state sector dominant and in charge of planning. Sounds kind of dengue. This was, he argued, an attempt to develop Grenada's productive forces such that might allow the conditions for socialism, namely industrialization, a significant working class, and popular education. It was, Bishop said, the Caribbean's equivalent to Lenin's 1921 new economic policy in which the market existed but was subject to state direction. Sounds kind of dingite. Goddamn, Bish. According to asshole Minister of Finance Bernard Cord, for years in our country there was no serious planning. Our people had experienced corrupt and inefficient leaders making haphazard decisions which left our country and its people underdeveloped and poor. In response, the PRG put in place ambitious plans to combat poverty, educate the population, and develop skills, improve the national infrastructure, diversify the economy, build a manufacturing base, and, crucially, boost tourism. So, yeah, this is basically classic Dengism on the economic front. But, like, what other option did they have? And I swear to God, if you all call me a Dengite, I am going to murkety-murk you. And Reagan did not want Grenada to have an airport. The decision to build an international airport in Grenada was met with enormous hostility by the Reagan administration in Washington, which had assumed power in 1981 and immediately rejected attempts by Bishop and his government to normalize relations. As Assistant Undersecretary of Defense, Dov Zakheim would write years later, it mattered little whether the airport would be used primarily as a tourist facility. It was the potential that the airport offered to the Soviets that worried American analysts. So basically, they were afraid that they were going to have another Cuban Missile Crisis. Because you had détente for a little bit in the 70s, but, like, this was the same year that the world almost blew itself up. Like, there was a there was a situation when the Soviets thought that the Americans had launched a single missile at them. Okay, if somebody's going to nuke you, they're not going to send one nuke, okay? They're going to send mini nukes. And it ended up being the sun reflecting off clouds. But if it wasn't for one dude, we would not be giving this speech. And this isn't a speech, but I would not be talking to you right now. We would be dead. My mom was a kid in 1983 because my mom would be dead. Thereby, I would never have existed. That would be a major loss to humanity. Domestic factors also weighed heavily on the revolution in its final years. The international recession of the early 80s impacted Grenada, as did the stuttering economies of its allies in the communist world. By 1983, the party internally accepted that its revolution was no longer possible as it had been 4 years earlier. But it was not, in the first place, down to the economy. The NJM became increasingly divorced from the masses, responding to each difficulty by doubling down on its determination to build a minoritarian organization. The exception to this was Maurice Bishop, the hugely popular prime minister. It was Bishop and not the New Jewel movement who the crowds saw as the embodiment of the revolution, according to Meeks. He was the person with the common touch, the ability to convert the PRG's policies into words that everyone could grasp and the timing to use them appropriately. A keen student of Caribbean socialists like C.L.R. James, as well as African liberation leaders like Kwame Nkrumah, Bishop was an extraordinary public speaker, but these abilities contributed to his alienation from the party. While Bishop electrified crowds at home and abroad from the podium, he was widely considered in the NJM to be an inferior organizer to Bernard Cord, who built his position in the party at Bishop's expense. This divide became apparent with Cord's resignation from the Central Committee in 1982. By 1983, it had thoroughly undermined the New Jewel movement. Cord and his supporters felt, with some justification, that the party was the spine that propped up the government, but it was being neglected in its development. They pushed a strategy of joint leadership aiming to bring Cord's abilities for organization to the fore alongside Bishop's talents for communication. Bishop initially accepted this. So he was like, yeah, you know what? We can share power. Fuck it. Long live the Revo. But Cord did not like that. He thought that Fidel Castro cautioned Bishop against joint leadership and even suggested Cuban support for military action. Castro and his government argued that Cord was engaged in an ultra-left conspiracy of his own, stacking party votes and organizing to depose or even kill Bishop. Bishop, after coming back from Cuba and rejecting rejecting joint leadership, was put under house arrest. Then, on October 19th, he was freed by the masses. Then they arrested him again, took him to a fort, and shot him in the head. Yeah. And the writer says, in this case, a failure to grasp the particular abilities of Bishop to act as conductor for the energies of revolution proved fatal. So, yeah. They didn't hold elections. They suspended the Constitution, and they ended up murdering their most popular guy. They murdered their most popular guy. Yeah. We reject great man theory. That's why I did a stream on Juche yesterday. But, this wasn't that. They liked Bishop because they affiliated him, his family had shed blood for the revolution. They killed his dad. Gairy killed his dad. And he was able to actually explain that's why the Chinese masses liked Mao so much. It wasn't because they were obsessed with the image, the idea of Mao. It was because Mao was able to explain to them what they needed to do, what the party was doing, and what the Chinese people as a whole needed to do. So, yeah. So what happened within the New Jewel movement was you had this Cord group, okay, the hardliners, so to speak. Fidel would call them ultra-leftists, even though all of these people could be technically termed rightists. I don't know if Fidel got in Bishop's ear. I doubt it because that's kind of It's kind of anti-black. Oh, black person can't think for himself. He needs his Cuban to think for him. Like, that's how Reagan thought. Reagan thought that Grenada revolution was going to be a puppet of the USSR. And he was afraid of the airstrip because, like, oh no, they're going to have bombers there and they're going to be able to drop their nukes on us, even though America. Like, the thing is, like, okay, the Soviet Union never really posed a military threat hardcore to the United States, okay? Like, even nowadays, like, the United States has no real peer militarily. We still have the biggest, baddest motherfuckers with the biggest, baddest toys. But American foreign policy goals cannot let the American public know that. Like, we're supposed to be afraid of North Korea, okay? In a war with the United States, North Korea would be, like, in a conventional war, North Korea would be fucking steamrolled. Even if they launched their nukes, okay, yeah, you might fuck us up. But we've got more, and we would dump them all on you. So that's why, like, it's all trade war, economic bullshit. Like, nobody is seriously going to militarily attack the United States. But the government wants you to think that that is actually on the table. China is not going to militarily attack or fuck with us, okay? Neither is Russia, because they would all be fucking, like, yeah, both of these are nuclear armed powers, but they're not stupid enough to use them. So conventionally, yeah, no, not going to happen. So back then, like, why would you be afraid of a small island building an airport? They want an airport to bring tourists, many of which will be Americans. Like, Bishop's government showed no hostility to the United States. Reagan was the asshole. Reagan's government was the government that cut the Grenadians off. You don't want to talk to us? Well, fuck you too. I'm surprised they allowed him to enter the United States to give a speech at Hunter. Like, they do this shit, and then they drum up this fake outrage, this fake fear, and then they go in and they ruin positive experiments. That's why the world hates America. So how did the masses respond to the revolution on March 13th? For many among the poor, and particularly the young of Grenada, the revolution of March 13th, 1979 was a new day. Let us recall a few of their voices. On March 13th, following the radio message when the revolution took over the radio station, we marched to our local police station at Birch Grove. About 20 of us, mostly women, and we told the police to put up the white flag. Then we took positions in different areas, cooking for our troops, running messages, and keeping guard, and also listening out for any counter-revolutionary plans. So this had mass support. Like, anytime 200 women, 200 anybody just get together and just go to the police and be like, okay, you all need to fucking quit. Like, that is mass support. They were so fucking sick and tired of Gairy that they took it upon themselves to back up and support the revolution. The group looked at the needs and problems of the area, social investigation. There were pipe stands with no taps, so women had to carry the water a long way to their homes. So we went to the Ministry of Communications and Works to apply for pipe taps, and we got them in a few days. So this was our first concrete gains. So it's just a lot of people talking about, you have somebody that returned from the United States. When the revolution happened, I went to the United States. I was in the States. So I came back from the States. I really wanted to make up for not being here. I started going to rallies. The first one I went to was with Zambian President Kaunda, and I was so impressed. I had never seen people so united and together like that before in Grenada. So, a variety of international solidarity conferences. This was actually the result of a mass workers meeting. Like, you actually had mass meetings that were being held. You had mass debates, and these were the results. Workshop 1, more community work should be done on weekends for the roads of the country. Materials and technical manpower should be provided by the PRG. More local food should be grown, such as peas, vegetables, as too much of these are now being imported. Production of coconuts should be increased. New plantations should be established, as well as 1 to 2 acres of idle land on large estates. The preparation of a softer textured salt fish should be looked at. More sales could be achieved if this is done. More use should be made of compost so as to cut back on the use of artificial fertilizers, thereby saving foreign exchange. So you've got workers that are actually involved in economic matters. Like in the United States, how much would you say that the average American knows about the fucking economy? Oh, line go up, line go down. President won't lower price of gas. Like you had these people that were actually involved directly in the running of their country. Ugh. I'm actually building up my stamina to talk. So we've already talked a bit about Bishop. I try not to focus on individuals, but it talks about like he was basically the black version of Fidel and Chavez. Actually, you know what? Fuck that. Let's combat anti-black language. Fidel Castro and Hugo Chavez were mestizo and white versions of Maurice Bishop. Like I hate when people say, "Oh, he's Black Lenin." No, Lenin was the Russian so and so. They invited Paulo Freire to design and lead the implementation of a literacy program, which was successful in wiping out illiteracy. They had an 85% literacy rate before the revolution. Afterwards, they had a 98% literacy rate. And most of this was already seen. He had real reasons, like the revolutionary government had real reasons to oppose, like the meddling that's inherent when you have a parliamentary system. Like if they'd had elections, the United States would have basically would have fucked them over. Like they would have tried to pull a Chile on them. Matter of fact, they did. They did. Like they put a bomb under a speech under a podium where revolutionary leadership was giving speeches and killed teenagers. And Bishop talks about destabilization. There's actually that CIA book that I'm reading by Douglas Valentine, The CIA's Organized Crime. He talks about destabilization. So he talks about the incident on March 13th. But what is destabilization? It's a concept aimed at creating political violence, economic sabotage, a concept which, when it fails, eventually leads to terrorism, like in Chile. We think of the attempts to use local opportunists and counter-revolutionaries, people who try to build a popular base, people who fail in building that popular base, and people who, as a result of having failed to fool the masses, then turn to the last weapon they have in desperation, the weapon of open, naked, brutal, and vulgar terror. So how did that happen in Chile? You had the March of Pots and Pans. You had local rich women that were organized to complain about the lack of food after their rich husbands had hidden all the food in the countryside in warehouses that were guarded by mercenaries. Okay, that didn't work. You had the masses that were turning out with guns or asking for guns because the fucking government had stupidly passed a gun control law anyways. So that didn't work. So they just engaged in naked, brutal, fascist, and vulgar terror. Except in Grenada, the New Jewel movement itself cannibalized itself and murdered their major spokesperson. And then Reagan invaded and attacked the country and reimposed the fucked up system that they have today. So different, but same. And there was a trial, actually, in 86. They convicted 14 people of murder and sentenced them to hang for killing Prime Minister Maurice Bishop and 10 supporters in a coup, which it didn't prompt, because they didn't give a shit if Maurice Bishop died. But they wanted to use that because, like, Cord and Austin were not really friends of the United States. So they wanted to use that as a cudgel to topple what was left of the Grenadian Revolution, saying that, oh, they have a horrible military coup regime. The United States loves military coups. It doesn't love left-wing, in big air quotes, military coups. So they sentenced the former prime minister and his wife, 3 other defendants, the guy that was in charge of the military, and a bunch of other people. I don't think they ever executed any of them. So yeah, that's basically what happened in Grenada. So what can we learn? You have to take advantage of opportunities as they present themselves. When Gairy tried to have the entire fucking party massacred, they took it upon themselves. They were ahead, iron discipline. They took it upon themselves and they seized power in the whole country. They deposed Gairy, and he ended up in a fucking nice little ranch house in Southern California. I don't know or care if he's dead or alive, but he was not allowed to rule Grenada anymore. So after you seize power, especially if you're in a small country, like you can't afford to be a dogmatist, but you also can't afford to be a dingist either. But like, I don't know. Like, I've never run a country outside of Tropico, so I'm not going to like try to advise people on what to do or try to like armchair general or armchair economist, because I used to do that shit, and like people were like, Chris, what the fuck are you talking about? And yes, I just fucking use my real name. Anyways, BRG, Chris, whatever. What the fuck are you talking about? So it's important when we're talking about, like, when we're analyzing prior systems, we have to understand that these people were between a rock and a hard place. And the penalty for failure, or the penalty for failing to adequately take care of your business, is you are playing with the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. 110,000 people are going to die, or a substantial chunk of that 110,000 people are going to die if you don't do the right thing. And even if you do the right thing, people still may die. So leadership is not hard. So ruling and leadership is hard. But when you armchair general or armchair economist things off the internet, it's like, first of all, the government in question is never going to read it. Like, I made fun of Juche yesterday because Juche is easy to make fun of. But when you have a serious revolutionary project like that, which happened in Grenada, like, you have to be very, very, you have to read a variety of sources. You have to actually listen to the people themselves, and you have to study. And finally, and I think the biggest lesson that we can learn from Grenada is that, for God's sake, don't stage a coup against members of your own government, against members of your own party. For one, if the guy is popular, like Bishop was, they're going to free him, and they might come after you. So you desperately seize this man and his entourage and the people that are still loyal to the group of people that's actually doing shit for the people, because nobody wants to live under a fucking military coup. After the military took over, they basically said, everybody stay in their house for a week. If you leave, you get shot. Nobody wants to live under a system like that. People loved Bish. That's what they called him, Bish. So you execute this man because you're simultaneously jealous of him, and you're also an ultra-leftist, and you're afraid that Fidel Castro is going to get in his ear. So Reagan, your enemy, is going to look at this and be like, you know what? We could get him out. We could take him out now. So they're going to send 6,000 fucking paratroopers to your island, and now none of you are in charge. Never, ever fight in public. Handle line struggle in a principled fashion. Humble yourself and check your ego. That, I think, is the main lesson of the collapse of the Grenadian Revolution. But was it a world historic thing? Yes. Like, this was the first Marxist-inspired revolution in the Anglophone, English-speaking world. Like, before this, there had never been a Marxist government in an English-speaking country. So there's definitely a lot we can learn about this, because they're English-speaking, and Grenada was a 95% African descent country. So, long live the rebel. Don't kill your own guys.